Our last conversation was in very dark days, the darkest probably. I felt that our blood was in the water and that we may not be able to bounce back from that and recover our deterrence. And in this neighborhood, as you see now in Syria, in this neighborhood without deterrence, if you are not strong, sooner or later you're dead. And that's how it felt. And we had a hostile American administration, people only now understand how hostile. Those of us who follow American politics knew that it was hostile. We knew that Biden was hugging Netanyahu over the table while kicking his shins under it. And we just didn't know the extent. But they were stepping on our oxygen supply with the embargo on ammunitions. And it was not just the large bombs, it was everything. The army was complaining about the D9s. The D9s are these bulldozers that enable you to approach a building without risking the lives of soldiers by entering it in case it's booby-trapped. So your way to save lives is to bomb from the air, or else, if you can't, or if there's a danger of too many civilian casualties, you use D9s, and we bought D9s. There was 150 D9s, and they wouldn't let us have them. And I heard from people in the army saying, this costs us lives daily, these 150 missing D9s. So the time was really dark. And if you remember, I said that we are facing a decade of wars. Because we will have to break the noose that Iran has been constructing around us. And that it may take a few wars, as it took to break the noose that Nasser tied around us since the mid-50s. And it took 25 years to break Nasser's noose, the pan-Arab construction to destroy the state of Israel. And happily, I was probably wrong about the time. This war, I don't think people, certainly in Israel, where the press is so poisonous, people don't understand the amazing achievements of this war. It was not a success in Gaza. We have a semi-insubordinate brass in the military, and I can talk about that a little bit later, but we have almost destroyed the Shiite axis of evil, as the Prime Minister called it. So we were able to do what I thought would take 10 years. And I remember I said the next war is going to be with Hezbollah, and it's going to be terrible. It's going to be more terrible than any war that we have experienced. That is what we thought when there were 150,000 missiles pointed at us. And I thought that, well, when we finish Gaza, this is going to be the next war. And as bitter as it's going to be, we are going to have to fight it. Because we at no price can we allow this monster to sit on our border, perched over the north of Israel, and knowing the Nazi ideology that they are motivated by. And so we would have to do it, even if the price is 15,000 civilian casualties, as some newspapers predicted. And no one anticipated the beeper. And I remember sitting here in my studio doing the Israel Update podcast with Mike Duran, who called it the grim beeper. And no one imagined that we can turn the tide in this way. So what Netanyahu managed to do in the face of a hostile American administration, and let me point out that no prime minister has ever managed to stand for long to continue a war in the face of American resistance. Whenever we didn't finish the war as quickly as the 6 Days War, or now the destruction of the Syrian army in 2 days, so whenever we didn't finish the job ourselves very quickly, at some point an American administration stepped in and said enough. And then we had to obey. And now we did not. Netanyahu did it very carefully, because the escalation was calculated in a very sophisticated way, because if you escalate by killing someone who's wanted by the United States and has a bounty over their head and the blood of Marines from Beirut, people that have their hands in blood to their elbows. The United States can't criticize you for killing someone that's wanted by the American government. And in that way, Netanyahu managed to escalate slowly. And we have almost destroyed Hezbollah. We have toppled through proxies. By doing that, the Assad regime collapsed. And we took out all the air defenses in Iran. Now the question is, will we finish the job? But that job was, I thought, a job that would take a decade.
And what would finishing the job look like?
First of all, taking out the nuclear program in Iran. People are not aware of it, but when Biden was elected, I thought that the existence of Israel is in serious danger. Because looking in retrospect now, the Iranians had some 500 and something centrifuges for enriching their uranium. They now have over 13,000. That's in 4 years of the Biden administration. This is the advances that they made. If Kamala Harris would have won this election, then the Iranians would have a bomb, unless Israel would defy everyone and do it. And that is really tricky. And here, you know, and we pundits, we talk about this, but the truth is, as we didn't know about the beepers, we do not know what Israel's military capabilities really are. But we do know that it will require a sustained campaign to take out the whole nuclear program in Iran. And that it's very difficult to do it from a distance. And so without American backing, it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible. So we are in better shape now. You know, things are developing day to day. So I don't know where the Trump administration would take it, but it will definitely not protect the Iranian nuclear program. So that is the main target. But we also can't have Hezbollah, and we did not finish the job. So I'm still worried that we'll end with half compromises in Lebanon, that we would end in a problematic situation in Syria, where Iran was expelled, but Turkey is now more or less master.
Talk about what's happening right now in Syria. We've seen some really disturbing images coming out of Syria.
Yeah, you know, look at the press now. Everybody's saying that there is a new Jelani. He is appearing now with a tie and a tuxedo. These jihadists, they all share a murderous ideology, and we should not expect from, you know, the brethren of Al-Qaeda and of ISIS anything that is like Western values, Western way of life, nor by the way should we expect to operate vis-a-vis these people with a set of incentives and deterrents that we use in the West. This was our terrible mistake with Gaza. All our intelligence said, they will not want to give up their economic achievements. So these are religious people. They take their religion very, very seriously. And their version of religion is an extremely murderous one and includes this horror show of sadism, which they wallow in. It's just, you look at these pictures, and this is not something that you can operate in Western terms at all. So we've managed to kick Iran, to weaken Iran considerably, including kicking it out of Syria. But now we have Turkey close to our border, and Turkey is actually a more serious thing than Iran. It's a more stable state. It's a more robust economy, and it has a real army. Iran has a missile arsenal, not a real army. So we have to see how to play the new balance, but it's a different world. We thought we were on the verge of being suffocated by the Iranians, and the fact that the world was willing to accommodate them is a frightening lesson about how the West has lost its immune system. It does not recognize pathogens. It does not recognize the forces that are able to destroy it, and it's obsessed with its own conscience instead of looking at the world soberly, so that it became more important to say the right thing than to do the right thing. Grandstanding became more important than taking a moral stand.
That's a really interesting insight, and
I can actually give you a very concrete example. Yigal Karmon, the head of MEMRI, the Middle Eastern Media Research Institute, collected sermons of imams in North America, and that is in the United States and Canada.
Yeah.
And this was very disturbing. About 95% of them, he said, were wildly anti-Semitic, some of them actually inciting to violence against Jews. And he thought Jewish organizations would sound the alarm, but they didn't. Many Jewish organizations were apparently more worried about appearing Islamophobic than they were about warning their own congregations, their own folk, against this looming danger. And he told me, Karmon did, that he managed to get a hearing in the Council of Presidents. And in that conversation, what they were worried about is how he collected the information rather than the content of the information. Did he eavesdrop, and was it collected illegally? It was all taken off the web. He just speaks Arabic. And apparently nobody would touch it. Nobody except the ultra-Orthodox and some on the right. Everyone was so scared of political correctness that they were not willing to say that there is a rising tide of incitement to violence against Jews.
When was this?
The report was, I think, 2020 or even 2019. And then it had a few variations, because then Kamon said to himself, well, maybe if I compile a whole array of hate speech, real hate speech, not microaggression, actual incitement to killing people. If I compile a report that would be right and left, then maybe they would be able to use it, or would have the guts to use it. So he said, okay, there'll be a report now, not just about Islamo-Nazism, but also against neo-Nazis on the right, hatred of gays, hatred of blacks, all this. So he compiled a whole array from what was going on the web, with websites inciting to violence. And still, because Islam was in it, people were not willing to touch it. And it was impossible to report left of center and left. So I don't want to create the impression that the center would. It was only the radical right which would do anything with these reports. And this is the truth. And then we know this phenomenon because, speaking about Yigal Karmon was one of the first to say in 1994, when Yasser Arafat came here, the leader of the Palestinians as part of the Oslo Accords, and he started giving speeches in Arabic calling for jihad against Israel. And this was our peace partner. So he was speaking, half lukewarm peace from one side of his mouth, and then telling his own flock that this is like Hudaybiyah. This is like the agreement that the Prophet Muhammad made with the Jews, only to betray them later. So he was saying to his people, don't worry, it's not really going to be peace. It's just a phase in the war. And Yigal Karmon translated these speeches on clunky old video cassettes, and he brought them to journalists. And one of our most prominent journalists, probably, this is the Tom Friedman of the Israeli press, in the bad sense of the word, I guess, and Nahum Barnea. And Nahum Barnea refused to publish them. He said, and according to Karmon, there's a controversy which Nahum Barnea denies, and I got entangled in this because I published it again, and they threatened me with libel, which never came through. But according to Karmon, Nahum Barnea said to him, there is no such thing as truth. Every news story serves some ideological purpose, and yours serves the enemies of peace. This is how rotten postmodern epistemology in the press has gotten, and he refused to publish it. And then Nahum Barnea said, I never said such a thing. And when I got into this polemic with him, he said, I never said there is no such thing as truth. But he did not deny that he didn't publish the story. So they were protecting the Oslo Accords and the leftist plan of peace. I was a supporter of that, regrettably, of that plan in those days, because we didn't know. We did not know that Arafat was telling to his people that he's lying to us. But they thought that they can preserve and they can sort of bridge an intermediary time of confusion until everybody matures and realizes peace is the only solution. And so if Arafat says this or that thing, we shouldn't be too alarmed by this, but we shouldn't let the public know, because the public is hysterical, untrustworthy, and as you know, these elites think the problem with democracy is citizens. Without citizens, it would all be perfect. The problem is that citizens are proto-fascist by nature, and so you can't let them have the truth. You should give them a vegan diet of news in which they will only be treated to what the elites think that they are capable of digesting.
Is that what happened before October 7th?